I like walking around, it's good for me. Could you tell me where we could go eat? Take me to the good times. I just gotta get out those days, you see. I like walking around, it's good for me. Could you tell me where we could go eat? Take me to the good times. Summer's in Brooklyn, women in age, shaking hands on the rooftop on the MLK. Springtime in London, fall in Tokyo. I fall in love more every time I go, yeah. When the sun comes out in Portland, I'm talking Oregon and Maine. Might stick around until the weather change. Just gotta get out those days, you see. I like walking around, it's good for me. Could you tell me where we could go eat? Take me to the good times. I just gotta get out those days, you see. I like walking around, it's good for me. Could you tell me where we could go eat? Take me to the good times. Trying to hang like a local. Could you tell her where to go? Put a corn in the jukebox at the hole in the wall. Grab the hills in Chicago. I'ma pass on number Lord and take a recommendation for a good grab ball. When the sun
Good morning, everyone. I am Andres Montoya. I'm a leadership coach and executive coach, passionate about jazz and a sax player. And this is Coffee with Leaders. I'm your host today. So thank you very much for joining us today, for the people who are joining us. And the people who are seeing us on a stream, because this video is going to be recorded, welcome to you too. Thank you very much. This is a space that I have called a very informal and very personal space in which we talk about our experiences and our leadership journey. So thank you very much again for joining us today. And my guest today, I'm very happy to have here Vinay Kumar. He is also an executive and leadership coach. Vinay, good morning and very welcome to this space. Vinay is passionate about hiking and reflecting. So welcome and thank you very much for being here with me in Coffee with Leaders. Vinay.
Thank you, Andres, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you today, and thank you.
Okay, welcome. And the people who are joining us, I want to remind you that you can make comments on the chat and also questions if you want to ask us anything during the conversation. Okay, so let's get started. As this space being a very personal space, Vinay, the first question that I always ask to my guests is, who are you? Who is Vinay Kumar?
Wow, that's a big question, Andres, right? I'm wondering which perspective I answer that from. Who am I as a being? Who am I in terms of my roles and what I do? And gosh, who am I? There's so much I know, and there's a whole lot I don't know about who I am. I'm still discovering and learning that. But at a high level, perhaps in terms of being, I'm a learner. I have a passion for learning. As I mentioned, I love to read. I'm a compassionate human being. I love to serve others and then help others learn and grow. In terms of my roles, I'm a dad, I'm a father, I'm a husband, son, and so on. In a profession, I'm an executive leadership coach. I have the privilege of working with leaders in many different sectors and different parts of the globe, and something I enjoy very much in terms of both developing them, growing, and also my own growth. In the process, I also learn and grow myself as well. So we all wear many, many different hats, and there's many different parts of us as well. But what a great question to begin with. Who am I? And that's a big question, Andres.
Yeah, and thank you very much for sharing everything that you have talked about. I was delighted to hear that you are still discovering. Wonderful. That's a very nice affirmation. And everything that you said after that, talking about that you're a learner, and I could see on everything that you said that you really have a purpose of helping people. And I have seen that we know each other for what we do in the coaching and in the community that we belong to. And I can see that you really have a purpose. So thank you very much. And very, very nice about still discovering. That's something very nice to hear and to acknowledge. So thank you very much for sharing that.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
So when we programmed this streaming, and when I posted it in LinkedIn, I said that the subject that we would cover in this conversation today would be talking about being driven, being a driven leader, and what that means. So just as a start point, I took the definition that we can find in the dictionary, which is on the screen. Being driven is someone who is driven is so determined to achieve something or be successful that all of their behavior is directed toward this aim. That's the definition from the dictionary. Very powerful and very good. So if you agree with me, we can talk about this definition and what it means for a leader to be driven, because it has advantages and it also has some drawbacks. So why don't we start talking about the advantages of being a driven leader, Vinay?
Yeah, driven is such a powerful energy, right? Because we can use the energy in the service of creating something, bringing something into being, into existence that perhaps did not exist before. So driven just takes a lot of it's energy to make things happen, whether it's creating a business, it's getting us some education, maybe going on some planning a trip. But with driven, it's just this pure energy that we can, like a magnifying glass, just focus it and channel it and leverage it to create something happen, whatever that is in one's life. Whether it's a hobby that one's excited about, when I create something out of that. But there's a lot of gift in it, right? We can get many things accomplished. It's just pure fuel. And I think about a pure energy and use it correctly, we can make a lot of things happen in our lives. And it's just pure energy. As I think about it, is how we use it, Andres. It's like a car, right? It has fuel in it. When you put the fuel and you turn ignition on, we can get from point A to point B. And behind that, getting there is all this energy that makes it happen. That's the drive. It's so important in life.
Yeah, that's true, and I like the definition that you gave. Energy to make things happen, because that's what it is. And when we look at leaders, even people, not only leaders who have people in charge and they have to lead a team, but when we see the leaders and we see the energy, they can make things happen. And the beautiful thing about what you said is that you can put this energy with a purpose, something that you want to create, because you were talking about a creation process from going from point A to B, and that energy is the energy that we need to move from there, from one point to the other one, and then create, to bring things alive. I love the words that you use. I've been reading Robert Fritz about that, about the structured attention, and he talks about this, and he talks about the energy that comes from the structured attention when you want to create something, and then there is a difference between that something and the current reality. So this energy that the leaders have when they are driven and they transmit that to their teams and to the people they work with, then that's something very, very powerful when it's very well canalized. So I would say that the advantages that it has is that it energizes the people, energizes the leader itself, energizes the team, and even the organization. So all this energy is to create the results that matter for the company. And I think one of the biggest advantages of being driven is usually leaders who are driven are leaders who actually deliver good results, very good results, always deliver results, always achieve the goals, always take the team to achieve the goals. I don't know if you agree with that or have any reflection about what I just said.
Well, we certainly make things happen, right? We can drive the individuals, we can drive ourselves, we can make the impossible possible. We can just the energy you put in, we can make things happen. It is necessary. It is an important energy to have in our lives. So absolutely, without any fuel, the car doesn't move forward. We can have all the desires and we can have dreams. We're going to get somewhere, but until we put some energy into it, intentional energy, focused energy, it's just a wish, isn't it? It's just a dream. But we gotta act on it, and that takes drive.
Yeah, that's true. And I like when you say the fuel, because that's the fuel that creates the energy that we're talking about. Yeah, beautiful. How many? Well, you work with leaders on coaching processes. So how do you see this quality of being driven with the leaders that you have been working with in coaching processes?
Well, that's a great question. So, as we've been speaking, driven makes happens, but overdrive, when we push too hard, this we got a couple different angles here, Andres. Overdrive also comes at a cost, right? There's a flip side of it. We see the positive. We can we get things done, but sometimes it comes at a great personal cost. Our health can get in the way. Our health can suffer, not get in the way, it can suffer. Our relationships can take a hit. We may be so singularly focused on getting something done, we may ignore other parts of our lives that are also important. I remember reading this book called What Got You Won't Get You There. Marshall Goldsmith talks about goal obsession. He said goal obsession by itself is not the issue, but it's the behaviors that result from it can become an issue. We can push hard. I use this metaphor. It's like a speedboat. We're going 1,000 miles an hour. We're covering great distance, but people are falling in the water. We're not even aware of it. We can leave a wake in our path. We can leave bodies, as we say, metaphorically speaking. So again, there's a double edge, right? There's a wonderful gift here, but used in a way that maybe overdone, overdrive, over push, it comes at a great personal cost and cost to others around us. And yeah, that's why I think about drive, right? It's in the service of what? Is it coming from a sense of fear? If I don't make things happen, wow, something bad's going to happen. And I'm this fear driven, that's energy draining. It's exhausting. Yeah, when we take the same fuel, we use it in the service of something that really matters, that energizes us into something greater good. It's a wonderful thing. Everything is double
Yeah,
edged, right?
and you're mentioning something that I think is very important, which is when we talk about a quality, usually when we overuse it, like in this case, it has some costs. Usually it costs on us, and some leaders that I have worked with, they say, well, I'm taking the charge, I'm taking the cost on my shoulder. But sometimes they are not aware that they are putting also some charge on the people. I love the metaphor that you mentioned about the boat, that it was speeding up very, very quickly and then throwing people away from the boat. That's a very nice metaphor. I like it because that's what sometimes happens when a leader overuses driven and is not aware about the impact that the leader is having in the other people, because the weight is not only on his shoulder, but also on the shoulders of the team and the other people. And yeah, when I have worked with some leaders, that fear of not accomplishing the results, it's a fear that sounds very threatening to them. Have you seen the same?
Very much so, very much so. And something else comes to mind is for cost, right? If we're getting things done, we may get things in the short term, but what about our time for reflection, time for learning, time for growing other people, and time for scaling the business? So sometimes we can great results in the short term, but it's short in the long term. Sometimes it doesn't scale very often at times. So that comes to mind as well. Again, everything in life, like sugar in the right amount can make some great desserts and it tastes very good. But we take too much of it, we get diabetes, right, and other health issues. So everything in life is how do we use it, and in the service of what, as I think about it, Andres. And
Yeah,
knowing, am I going on overdrive or am I in the right amount? That's the awareness piece of it. Is how am I using this energy, and is it serving me and others around me?
yeah, and you mentioned one tool that the leaders can use for uh, increasing awareness, which is the reflection and the self-observation about how leaders are behaving. And especially if I identify that I'm a driven person, uh, be aware that if I overuse it, then I will be having impact on the other people. So the self-observation all the time, it is a tool that is very important uh, to make sure that the results are gotten, that we get the results that we want to create, but also that we balance that with keeping in balance, taking care for the people, communicating with them, letting them do the things. Because the other thing that I have seen in driven leaders is that they tend to do the things themselves, or either themselves or either their way. I remember there is one case study in the leadership circle from a guy in Honda, and he was saying that at the beginning, before getting the 360, he was saying it is either my way or the highway. That's how he entered the program. I really remember that, and I think he did some speech on the community, and he was saying that he was wrong at that time, and that's very costful for.
My chat talks about that from Honda.
Yeah, yeah, and so leaders who overuse the being driven can also be autocratic in this way and start doing either things themselves and charging themselves on the things that they're doing, or doing the things their way, which is also something that puts weight on the other people and also on himself. Have you seen the same? Do you have any reflection about that?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, yeah, I think about these things like I use a metaphor oftentimes is power tools. Power tools used correctly can create some beautiful works of art, but used incorrectly, we can get things done, but boy, they can come at some serious cost here. And yeah, you mentioned Leadership Circle. It's a wonderful, wonderful instrument for getting in sense of what's helping us thrive and really getting things done. And also, how are we getting in our own way? I think I heard you say Leadership Circle. That's one of my favorite. In fact, that is my go-to instrument for working with leaders, because I have found nothing else, Andres, in my journey that is as powerful, as effective in really increasing self-awareness, saying, how am I being successful? Am I being effective? How am I scaling my business? Also, how am I getting my own way? And
Yeah,
that instrument, there's nothing in the world that I've found is so effective in helping leaders really see their strengths, but also where they might be overusing them and how they can use them more effectively. So yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that is amazing, powerful instrument.
yeah, and I wanted to introduce in our conversation right now the tools that a leader can use to overcome these costs, or however we can call them, which is overusing the driven. And you mentioned it, being aware of how I am stepping on my own way, which is getting the accountability. And we come again to the self-observation, the self-reflection about these matters, uh, which is a tool that can be used for getting that awareness about how we are showing up. But I don't know how have been your experience, but my experience, even with myself, when I was doing my process and trying to improve my effectiveness as a leader, um, accepting that I'm stepping on my way, it's something that costs, doesn't it?
Mm, it does. It does. Yeah. And what's the cost of not accepting?
Um, because it was seeing a reality of myself that like I didn't realize. It was a blind spot at that point.
Mm,
So, and what I have seen is that when I experienced it myself, being this, so it was very, very hard. It was even shocking seeing that I was stepping on my own way. Uh, but when I work with leaders in coaching processes, it's been the same. That very moment when leaders realize that they are stepping on their own way, it's very revealing. It's like a leap moment in which, even though it's very difficult, it's very tough. It's very revealing because it's revealing blind spots. It's seeing the light and seeing the path that one can follow to become a better version of oneself. I don't know if you agree with that.
I'm curious, Andre, how did you become aware that you're stepping or getting your own way? And how do you know when that's happening, when you're getting your own way?
It was when I was doing my coaching process. My coach at that point was Dean John Press. I think you might know him. And it was because it's not very easy stepping in those spaces by oneself. That's why getting a coach in the leadership coaching processes is very good, because the coach challenges you to enter these places, but also holds the space for you. That's what we do as coaches, because stepping on those spaces, it's hard, it's difficult, it's tough, it's revealing. So we need a person who is compassionate, who is loving, who has the courage to challenge us, but also compassionate enough to hold the space for us. So that was my experience when I was doing the coaching process for myself. When I'm seeing that, when working with leaders or working with any person in a coaching process, is that challenge the people, it's very important, but holding the space for them, it's very important too. So those reflection moments are much more productive when you work in partnership with somebody, coach, or if you want to do it with a therapist or somebody that can help you stepping on those spaces. That's my experience.
Yeah. I think self-awareness is through using these different like leadership circle and working with a coach can certainly help you gain self-awareness. I'll give you an example here for me, like you mentioned autocratic, right? For me, when something isn't moving forward, I can feel there's a surge of energy in my body, Andres. It happens right here. I can feel it. And that's when I begin to take over. Okay. Let me kind of be, prescriptive or directive. And while it gets things done in the short term, it would at times irritate people. I remember one time when I was running a business, somebody said to me, have jokingly said, Vinay, sometimes things just work better when you're not around. I said, ouch. But there was a half truth in that, right? But when things weren't moving or something wasn't going the way I would like it to go, I could feel the fear in me, the energy in me saying, boy, if this doesn't get done, what's going to happen? And how the mind just makes up all these stories. And I would just take over and just push and push and push. It got done, but it would push people away. It would push them away. And it didn't work for a long time.
And you just reminded me of my experience with the leaders I have worked with. And usually, we need to hear and sense our body, because everything that we're feeling, it's produced through the body. And usually when they come to these moments, the aha moments in which they realize that there is something that they are stepping in their own way and they need to do something about that. Usually they point to that part. It's the heart, stomach, the head, there is usually a physical reaction that shows the uncomfortness and how they're feeling, and that something is happening inside of that. Yeah, you reminded me of that. And in my case, it was also I could feel it in my body when I was feeling I was stepping on my way. In my case, it was being overcritical. I could feel it, the energy that you were talking about at the beginning, the fuel for the driven. I could feel it on the overcritical, like pushing me up to being critical with the people. And then I started seeing that. And once I acknowledged that that was happening and I identified how it was happening, then I could manage to do the reflection about what was happening behind in my thought, in my mind, in my body, and my emotions, to find a way so I could get over it. That's the way it worked for me.
Yeah, that's a really powerful practice, Andres, right? Knowing when we're overdoing something. Again, everything like we said, double-edged sword, but if you overdo it, but knowing when we're going over, there's always a sensation in the body, is my experience, right? There's always physical. But oftentimes as leaders, we're often living from the neck up. I was certainly that way many, many years. It's when since I went down this path, I began to become aware of my body sensations. I never thought about it before. The physical sensations, the emotions, the thoughts that go on. But it's our body that is often the first sign that I'm overdoing something. I've kind of pushed across that invisible boundary there. Then I can hit pause and breathe, and then more consciously choose my action, so it's more effective not only for me but others around me. But it's that body sensation is really important here in this work. Is what it means.
Yeah, great. And that's about the self-observation and the self-awareness. And if in here pointing towards moving ahead with the overdriven, there is a way, once identifying that sensation and the body and the reflection about what's happening, because the fear for not getting the results done, it's enormous, it's huge, it's something that it's threatening. So trying to say that the results are not going to be achieved, it's very risky for leaders and for the people who are driven. So what I have seen is that the way to turn this around, it's to go on the creative side, which is, a person like this drives results, delivers results, and it's driven. But we need to put the people on our side and do it together. So when we are overdriven, we are talking about I do, I must, I get, things like that. But the way to overcome it and to make it more in the creative is talking about the we, how we can get the results done. And then the role for the leader, once identifying this part of the reflection about the sensations, what the fear is and things like that, is to use the purpose and vision to give ahead the vision and where we want to go, and do it as a we. It's not I do, but it's how we feel that we do it together and the experience of doing it together. I don't know what you think about
Yeah, one thing you mentioned about, I think is, I'm not sure it's about overcoming, Andre. I think it's about, we have this beautiful energy of making things happen. So it's not, I think it's how we channel it, right? So rather than me doing it, me pushing it, I anchor on my vision, I help develop other people. I really bring others along. I collaborate, I foster team play. I really build these amazing, bring people together to make things happen for the greater good. It's just about how we use the feel. Feel is just feel. So I don't think we need to push it away. We need to use it in a way something that really matters for ourselves and others around us. And that way it becomes very generative. Actually, it's very energizing, and that fuel generates more fuel. But it's not coming from a place of fear, which can be very draining. But it's coming in service to something that really matters to us and others around us. And that way fuel multiplies,
it.
right?
Yeah, that's true. That's like putting nitrogen in the gasoline.
Exactly,
To
right.
the
So I
car.
think about people that are burnout. What is burnout? When we're doing something which doesn't give us energy. But if
Yeah.
you're doing something that really matters to you and others around you, well, now fuel multiplies. There's no burnout in that, right?
Yeah, that's true. And thank you for bringing that up. Very beautiful and very interesting. So, if we were to say here, Vinay, what would be kind of an exercise of a practice that we can use? You said canalize this energy to direct it to something that is purposeful.
Mm-hmm.
So, what will be, if we were to say in the next minute, what will be a recommendation or a practice for a leader so they can get that balance in that driven?
Yeah. So first is become aware. What does overdrive look like for the leader, right? And how do they know when we're in overdrive? I mean, oftentimes leaders will say, my heart is racing, my muscles are tense, I get the surge of energy, and my temperature is rising, I'm getting a headache. There's some physical sensations when when the leader knows they maybe have gone, they're overdoing something. So become aware of the physical sensations is the first step oftentimes. And then ask yourself, what is happening in my thoughts? What am I saying to myself? Is the thought serving them? And if not, can we reframe it? Can we look at it differently? Pay attention to emotion, their anxiety, is their worry, is their fear? What is happening in our emotional space? When we are becoming aware of it, now the situation no longer has us, we have it. Now instead of reacting, we get to respond consciously in a way that's going to serve us and others around us. And it always, my experience, it begins with body sensations. They're always there. And it's knowing, when am I overdrive? When am I going into critical? When am I going into autocratic? When I'm being overly perfect, right? How often does that happen? I gotta get it perfect. Well, we can become perfect when we become indecisive, for example. So these are all subjective things. These are spectrums. I think about them, but I think each person has to explore for themselves. When am I overdoing it, and how do I know?
Yeah,
Once you know that, then you become aware of it. You begin to notice it. Then you experiment, saying, okay, if I'm autocratic, next time I go into my autocratic space, let me approach it differently. Let me go from a coaching perspective rather than telling perspective. Let me see how that works.
okay.
Experiment, and if you find that's working, and you'll find that works well, do more of it.
Yeah,
And you mentioned Robert Fritz. He talks about iterate. We try different things and see what works. You experiment. Yeah, it's
yeah,
experimentation.
yeah. What work and what doesn't work. Yeah, I remember. What is his name? I forgot. Well, he says that in these cases he has in one part of the practice that he does. He's a coach, Alex something, the one that works with the adult development in this. I think you have seen him.
Alex
He says
Kaye.
that, yeah, and the practice is stop, challenge, and act. And that's what you just described. The stop is being aware of my body, asking myself what am I thinking. I was having lunch with a friend yesterday. He had gone through a very tough process, and we were talking specifically about this. Stop, see what's happening with you, see what's in your mind, and mainly what you're thinking about yourself. I'm just summarizing what you said. That the challenge is, can I do it this way or the other way or the other way? I have tried this way, it didn't work before, so I'm going to try this one, which is, like you said, I'm not going to step on the telling, but on the coaching side. So it's good. And then act. That's a very simple practice. We can call it simple, but when it comes to make it work, it's not that simple. I don't know if you agree with me on that.
Simple yet powerful. Simple yet not easy. And yet it's a matter of practicing. It's like anything in life, the more we practice, the more that muscle builds and eventually becomes second nature. Just for example, just a simple practice initially, maybe, you said stop, challenge, and what did you just stop, challenge, and act? Maybe simply first practice simply noticing and stopping, right? Hitting pause. That itself is a muscle to build. Oh, I'm on overdrive. I'm autocratic right now. Let me just hit pause. That itself is a practice. When we get really competent, we gain some competency with pause, then we can say, okay, now let me look at my emotions, let me look at my thoughts, and can I reframe it?
Yeah.
One step at a time. And then once we do that, now let me experiment with something else. It's just a journey, right? This is a step by step by step. It's like we learn tennis. We don't learn all the moves at one time. First, we learn the forehand, then we learn the serve, then we learn the backhand, then we learn the net, and at some point we put it all together. But step by step, and over time, it all becomes second nature over time. But step by step by step.
Yeah, and as you said, we need to experiment. So yeah, thanks for that. So if I wanted to summarize here, it's driven. It has advantages. It gives us the energy to get where we want to go from point A to point B, and energizes us, and it gives us the fuel. I love the word that you use, the fuel. That's one. The drawbacks, it's mainly the weight or the costs that it's on myself and on the other people, even if I think I'm not putting weight on the other people. And a good practice for this is stop noticing, mainly on my body, on my mind, then challenge and decide where to go, which is experiment and see what goes well and what doesn't, and then act. And then come to an iteration loop, and then continue learning, and evolving. I don't know if I summarize it correctly.
And I would also say one more thing. When we catch ourselves in the overdrive, let's say, for example, this comes from, I think, Jim Deathmer from Conscious Leadership. He talks about accept where you are. Don't judge yourself. Notice it, accept it, because how often do we judge ourselves or make ourselves wrong? No, accept it. This is where we are right now. When we can accept something, then we can change. When we resist, persist, accept it, then challenge, and then shift. So it just doesn't, I know 3 steps are nice, I like it, but just awareness of that, accept it also, because don't judge yourself for it. We're all human beings, we're on this human journey, and we're all evolving and learning all the time. We're works in progress. Is part of the journey here. So acceptance, I think, is also important.
Beautiful, and thanks for bringing that up, because that piece was very important. Just to add to what you just said, it's self-compassion. Usually we're very compassionate with the other people. Usually, sometimes don't, but usually we're very compassionate with the other people, but you're not very compassionate to ourselves. And that's the first person we need to be compassionate to. So yeah, that will be the summary. And thank you, because what you added is it's very valuable, and it's actually maybe a very important part. We have come to 35 minutes talking here.
My God, already
it didn't feel like that, did it? But anything you would like to say before we close this conversation, Vinay?
Just enjoy to be in conversation with you, Andres. Enjoy to work with the leaders we get to serve. They're amazing human beings doing amazing work. And it is such a privilege and such an honor. And I call this work very sacred, if I may use that word. It's just a privilege to do the work that we do. It's amazing we get to do this. I can't think of anything else at this time that we all do. It's just such a joy and so meaningful, Andres. And thank you for doing the work you do. Great, you're part of the community, and you're making a huge difference in the lives of so many, and then indirectly the lives of those they touch. So thank you for being part of this journey here, Andres.
Thank you, Vinay, and I'm with you. I also feel privileged for what we do, and especially privileged for the trust that our coaches put on us, because they trust us, because they put the vulnerability and everything on our hands. So I'm with you, and I admire the work that you do very much. I see how active you are in the community and the job that you do. And that's what I wanted to learn from you in this conversation, because I learned a lot. And thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for joining me today in this coffee. And thank you very much for being here in Coffee with Leaders. Thank you very much for the people who joined us during the streaming, and the people who are going to see the recording. So everybody, have a wonderful day. Be nice. Thank you very much for being here with me and being so generous. Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody.
I just gotta get out most days, you see. I like walking around, it's good for me. Could you tell me where we